one of the things, just to interject, one of the things that you noted was a difference, probably because of this education, again, as a contrast, between the early innovators in England, the really educated people who were also scientists and engineers, and they were doing experiments themselves, whereas the Mandarin class in China didn't do that kind of thing. And so that was probably one of the reasons why perhaps they didn't develop in the same way as the Industrial Revolution people did.
Well, this is part of, it's somehow related to the fact that if you play a very, very high premium to the mind and to manipulating symbols through intellectual work, this often goes with a social structure where you relegate anything that is not of the mind to a very, very low status. It may be impure, it's low caste, it's low status. And if you look at most civilizations, for example, particularly India and China, then you have the Mandarins or the Brahmins, and they are the top people. They're a very small proportion, but the rest are very inferior. And the more they use, the more they contact the physical world, in other words, the more they move matter around, the more polluted and low class they are. And therefore, it would be really extraordinary for someone who was a trained intellectual in those civilizations or a religious leader to actually get their hands dirty. They might, as Mandarins did, if they were in a province, they might supervise waterworks or whatever, but they wouldn't go and dig and so on. And a graphic example I remember is Arthur Young, who was a great agricultural expert of the 18th century and wrote a number of books. He traveled around Europe and he examined agriculture in different European countries. And he said it was amazing the difference when he went to Norfolk and met the Earl of whatever, he would have a dinner and all the farmers would be there and they would be talking with the Earl about, this and that and how to plant turnips and and he would be really interested and involved, and he might go down to the farm and dig up a turnip and so on and so on. And like Turnip Townsend, the great inventor of the modern agriculture. When Arthur Young went to France and he went to the chateau of so-and-so, there was never anyone who did anything practical there. He might have the local librarian or university professor or whatever. The idea that you actually got involved with the physical world. And I remember that Jerry Martin often talked about this, that the extraordinary nature of English society was that from the top to the bottom, like Robert Boyle, for example, who was a relative of the Earl of Cork and so on, from the top to the bottom, very distinguished people who, members of parliament, whatever, they would be also. And even nowadays, I remember interviewing the professor of physics at Cambridge University, and a very distinguished theoretical physicist. And I asked him what he did, and he said, well, my hobby is woodworking, and I go back. And when I interviewed a number of the astronomers like Anthony Hewish, they talk about how they'd make things notoriously or famously. Crick and Watson, they made all these funny devices. So hands-on, and it sort of epitomized where I'll end. Jerry Martin gave me a Chinese Mandarin's fingernail guard. Now this is, I haven't got it here, but it's a long thing like this. You put it to protect the long fingernail that you have on each hand. And that was a symbol. I mean, with a fingernail like that, you can't go and dig Swedes and turnips, and you can't type.
So it's the equivalent of kind of putting women in tight dresses and things like that, just to stop them, to show that they don't have to work for their
the broken feet
of
Chinese women for century after century, or putting them into purdah and so on, is another form of conspicuous leisure display showing this person is not going to do anything physical.